Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Courtside with Beilinson Tennis, part of the Tennis Channel Podcast Network. Glad to be joined as always by my co-host, Steve Flink. And also what a privilege it is to have on as this week's guest, current ESPN analyst, a former top five player in the world, runner-up at the 1990 and 1992 Australian Open, also the runner-up the 1993 French Open, and plus a heck of a lot more that we'll all get into soon. Mary Joe Fernandez, welcome to the pod, and thanks for joining Steve and myself.
Thank you, guys. I'm so happy to be with you.
So we're going to get into, obviously your background and your playing career and the
Hmm.
commentary of what you do so well right now. Also going to get into your family life a little bit, but we are recording this post U.S. Open, and
Yeah.
before we kind of get into your life and how it all started and how tennis all started with you, just wanted to hear your thoughts. I mean, how great was it to see the run, both the American men and women in New York? I mean, we had half of the semifinal
Yes.
draws on both sides. On the men's side, just a great run with Tommy, Ben, Francis, and Taylor.
Taylor. Yeah.
The women's side, I mean, Jess Pegula getting over the quarterfinals
Yes, that was
finally.
great.
Emma Navarro had a great run
Hmm.
as well. What just want to hear your thoughts on, and could you kind of feel the excitement building in New York as those Americans were making those runs?
Oh, totally. I think the depth in American tennis has gotten better and better, in the last 5 years. And not we just don't have, 13 or 14 in the top 100, but now they're making the shift into the top, 20, top 15, top 10, which is so exciting. The US Open last year, sort of, breaking through and leading the way, I think set the bar. But it also gave other players a lot of confidence. So for me to see Jessica break through was huge because I think she's one of my favorite players out there. I think she's so smart and her ball, it's a little bit old school, reminds me of, my era of hitting flat and through the court. Um, so I enjoy watching her play a lot. And then Emma Navarro, what a 12 months she's had. She was playing challengers at the end of last year and she just zoomed through the rankings this year. So to see her, take it to the next level and play quality tennis was fantastic. And on the men's side, they're knocking on the door. I mean, it's tough with the competition, with Sinner and Alcaraz and Djokovic at the top, but Taylor, to me, always backs himself. I think he really believes in his capabilities and that he can win a major. And it was great to see Francis play some of his best tennis again. His match against Ben Shelton was outstanding. We saw Ben break through last year at the Open, and then Tommy Paul's had a great season as well. So they keep getting better. They're pushing each other. So it's nice to see both the men and the women on the American side doing so well.
Steve and I have talked about this, and I think you would agree with this. But Jess, you mentioned Jess's ball. I
Mm-hmm.
think in person you'll appreciate the power more. It doesn't come off on TV as just a blistering ground strokes. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, her ball, it's almost like a trampoline effect. It comes off her racket really fast and it's so deep. It's so accurate. I think maybe that's something you can't pick up on TV as much. I was courtside for her final and yeah, you just see the way that her timing is, spot on. And, she was playing against a player who hits the ball so hard in Sabalenka and she was with her. She was with her toe to toe, and it was just a few points that made the difference in that final. But I was really impressed. I was really impressed with how far she's come. Her serve's getting better. I think that's the one shot that has held her back. But she's getting more free points off her serve, and I think the next step for Jessica is coming forward. Being able to transition and taking advantage of those great flat ground strokes.
Thanks for sharing your perspective. Now I think we want to have some time to spend with you now and learn about your journey and how this sport all kind of
Mhm.
evolved within your life. And I mean, we're going to get into the four straight Orange Bowls, which again to me is just absolutely ridiculous. But before we get to that point, um, kind of talk about how you got introduced to the sport and then leading up to some of those unbelievable junior career results, which I know Steve will definitely chime in on that.
Okay, so it was a little bit by chance how I started. Um, for those of you who don't know, so my mom is from Cuba, my dad is from Spain. He played recreation. Mimi, who's 10 years older than I am, and she played a bit of tennis with my dad. and I would sort of tag along. I would just kind of go to the local courts with them. And my dad cut a little racket for me. Back then, there were wood rackets, and he shaved the grip off. And he basically was like, here, go entertain yourself while I play with your sister. My sister had a bad back. She had scoliosis. She had to wear this brace. It was called a Milwaukee brace from her chin down to her hip. And the doctor told her, play a little tennis, strengthen the muscles around your spine. So she did it for that purpose. So my dad would take her after school and I would just be there. And then I think when I was 5, maybe almost 6, there was this pro from Peru. His name was Tom Gonzalez. I remember him very well. Came up to my dad and he said, I've been watching your daughter and I'd like to give her lessons. And my dad thought he meant my sister. And he's like, no, can't you tell? She's just doing this for exercise. She's got that brace. She doesn't love it. He's like, no, I've been watching the little one hit against, the fence and the wall. She has good eye-hand coordination. So that's how it started. He started like giving me lessons for free. And next thing I knew, I was playing tournaments. Being in Florida was a great place to grow up. If you wanted to play tennis, there were so many people to play with, so many tournaments. And I loved it. I didn't get tired of it. I'd come home and hit against my wall in my room. I'd hit against the refrigerator. I drove my parents a little nuts, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun from an early age.
Well, I think you took to it pretty good because I mean the results we're going to talk about are pretty extraordinary. Steve, I'll let you kind of talk about some of those results, some of which you saw when Mary Joe was at a young age.
I did. No, Mary Joe, after I called you to ask you to come on with us, I said, dug up this piece.
Oh boy.
It was when I first watched you play, was in the Orange Bowl in '84. So that's 40 years ago. And
jeez, a lifetime ago.
I remember watching, and this is what I wrote.
Okay.
For World Tennis. Fernandez won the girls' 12 nationals at the age of 10 and the 16s when she was still 12. Her footwork is exemplary and her preparation faultless. Fernandez is a baseliner with an excellent flat forehand and a two-handed backhand of the highest order, destined to reach the top 10 in the world within 3 years. Now, I was optimistic, but I wasn't that far off.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so because obviously then by 88, you're 17, you're 15 in the world, and then you went up to 12 the next year. So you were almost made my projection. But talk about the fact that you're officially listed, I guess, at 5'9.5", right? I mean,
yep.
So you were a little taller than a lot of the other players. You were a little more mature, I think, mentally and physically. Explain how and the U.S. and those national junior girls, but the way you leaped into the pro game like that,
sure,
so quickly.
Yeah. So one thing I left out before is my dad, I think when I was about 6 or 7, told my mom, Tom Gonzalez really thinks that, Mary Joe's pretty good at tennis, that we should really get her going and play more tournament or start playing tournaments. And my mom didn't know much about tennis, but she was good at researching. And she found out that Gardner Malloy, the great Gardner Malloy, was a teaching pro at the California Club. He's like, you know what? This U.S. champion is nearby. Let's see if he'll take a look at Mary Joe and see what he thinks. And I went and played with him for an hour. I'll never forget. He was the kindest man, but he didn't say much to me. But after the hour was done, he said to my parents, my only advice to you is to put her in tournaments so she learns how to lose. That's the most important thing. So my parents took it literally, and I was playing tournaments every single weekend, and I lost every single weekend. Which, looking back, you had to learn how to deal and how to cope. I'd say when I was about 10 is when things kind of changed and I started to win more matches and some tournaments. The Orange Bowl was great because it was in my backyard. And we used to go watch. I remember watching Susie Mascarin win the 18s when I was little. And just knowing that was sort of the pathway and the stepping stone to going pro. I never in a million years thought I was going to be pro. But as I started winning them, then people started talking. And I had great coaches. Don Petrine was one of my first coaches down in South Florida.
And his dad, of course, was
right.
Orange Bowl.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when I was about I guess 12, 13, maybe. I started with Fred Stolle a little bit, another one of my favorites. And yeah, it just was like, I just played and I started to win and I won nationals. Um, I grew up with Gabriela Sabatini. She was, my contemporary, and Stephie Graf, the Maleva sisters. And I'll never forget, I won the 12s, the 14s. I think I beat Gabby in both the 12s and the 14s.
Yeah, you did. You did.
Then she skipped. She went from 14s to 18s. And I remember asking my dad, should I do the same? And he's like, no. He's like, you're going to play the 16s. That's where you need to play. So she wins the 18s when I win the 16s. And then she goes pro. So I was like, wow, she's going pro. That's pretty cool. But anyway, a year later, I won the 18s. And my parents were very hesitant because they were like, oh.
Well, how old were you at that point when you
I was 14.
Right, because you made the quarters. Steve reminded me of this.
But
you
I had
made
already
the quarters
played
of the French at 14.
At 14, yeah. And I had already played a few pro tournaments at 13. So I had played, wow. I want to say the French Open maybe, and a couple qualifying tournaments, some Virginia Slims maybe in South Florida. So I'd sort of tasted a little bit of what the pro level was like. But my parents, and I look back and I thank them, they were very big on education. And they said to the agents, listen, she can play pro, but she's not dropping out of school. School comes first. So I didn't really start playing full time until I graduated high school. I didn't go to Australia until I graduated from high school. So I played mainly in the summer during spring break. And my school, I went to Carrollton Sacred Heart School down in Coconut Grove. I had the greatest principals and teachers that really worked with me. And they let me leave like 3 or 4 weeks before school got out to go play the French.
Wait, for the listeners, just, I want to stress this fact, Mary Jo. You said you had to finish high school. Most people finish high school at 17, 18 years old. You had got to the quarterfinals of the French Open at 14 years old.
Yeah, so I turned pro my freshman year. My freshman year in high school. Yeah, and I did get to play high school tennis 7th and 8th grade, which was a lot of fun. But yeah, so
did you okay? Were your results good at that?
I did okay, yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. It was just like the natural thing to do. I remember while I was in school, I always had sort of that excuse if I didn't do well on the pro circuit. Well, I'm still in school. I'm not dedicating myself, full time yet. So once I graduated high school, that's when it like all hit me. Like, okay, now there's no more excuses. Like now, here we go. But Steve, to your point, yeah, that's when I think I made my big jump. When I started getting physically stronger, playing week in and week out. And I want to say I got to the finals maybe of Australia pretty, soon after that.
Yeah, you did. But just quickly go back to that 86 French. Okay, you weren't going to leap out yet, but that must have been a pretty big eye opener for you to be in the quarters of Garros, exceeding your expectations. Was it difficult to think to the school part, or you just accepted it? Because a lot of people in your position might have thought, I'm ready to make a move here.
Yeah, no,
and the paycheck too, Mary Jo. The paycheck too.
Yeah, true. I was a rare, like my children don't understand it, but I actually like school. My best friends were from grade school through high school, so I enjoyed it. I never asked once like, oh, can I drop out? That was never part of my thinking, and maybe it's because my parents were so big on staying in school, but I enjoyed it. I'm glad I did do it. Nowadays, there's homeschooling, there's so many more options for players. But I think my pathway was the way it was supposed to be. And that French Open, yeah, it was crazy. I remember I played Andrea Temesvari second round, and that was on center court, and I was just like, whoa, like that was like a big deal. And then I played someone who I would end up playing some doubles with, Claudia Kota-Kilsch, from Germany in the 4th round. And that was a really tight match. But I got through it. And then I think I lost to Sukova in the quarterfinals.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, sorry, David. So it's funny. I mean, it's almost a recurring theme with these majors, but a few years later at Roland Garros, then you break through to the semis and beat Sabatini. and I'm gonna be bringing her up quite a bit. It's sort of hard to avoid it because you had so many interesting wins over her and such an interesting history with her. And from what I can tell, got along along exceedingly well with her. But
she was
one
of my closest friends. I mean, we started playing with each other or against each other at 8, 9 years old. Like we played the Sport Goofy Cup together. And then all the Orange Bowls. So yeah, we were good friends from an early age. I still see her. She's one of my favorites.
So was it hard to separate though? I mean, like for instance, when you beat her in '89 Roland Garros, by then you played her a lot between the juniors and now in the pro events. But I mean, was it tough to separate, or did you just get out there with the attitude that this was that you were out there, that this was a serious business?
Yeah. So I didn't have an issue. I was able to pretty much put our, friendship to the side while we were playing. I remember our families would come up to us before matches because we'd be like chatting or playing backgammon or doing something together. And they'd be like, you guys have to play each other in an hour. Like, what are you doing? But that didn't really phase us. I think I had a good game, it was a good matchup for me. And the fact that we played since such an early age, I wasn't intimidated playing her. I think when Gabby broke through, I remember got to the finals of Hilton Head, people didn't know like how to play her. She had the heavy topspin, the beautiful one-hand backhand.
How did you cope with that? Because you were a flat ball hitter. You were old school, as you put it. And
so I took it early. I try to take time away from her. And I think that was a good way to play her, but not a lot of people did that. I think I played her a lot down the middle as well because she was great with the angles. But again, I had that history in the juniors of playing her and having wins against her. So to me, when Gabby was ranked 3 in the world, to me, she was just Gabby. I'm just playing, someone I've played my whole life. So I think that worked in my benefit.
Mary Jo, that's so interesting you say that because I remember Jim Curry used to say the same thing in that group when Andre was the first one to make it big and Andre was playing in the finals and semifinals of slams. And Jim's like, I played with this guy 1,000 times down in Florida. If he can do it, why can't
exactly.
us?
So that worked for me. Yeah.
Well, exactly. there's a lot of memorable.
So Mary Jo,
Mary Jo. I mean, everyone's going to remember the 1993 French Open quarter one when you were down big, and I know Steve, you want to talk about that one for sure.
Yeah, no, that's where I was going to go next because that obviously was the greatest comeback of your career and one of the best comebacks in major Slam competition, you can argue. So you're playing her and you've been out there in the quarters of the 93 French for under an hour and you're down 6-1, 5-1 match point.
Yeah.
And then you eventually, of course, came all the way back to win 10-8 in the third, say 5 match point, and a match that looked like it was going to be under an hour turned into a 3.5 hour epic. What do you recollect about that one, and what you were thinking when you were that far down and how you somehow managed to manufacture this stupendous comeback against her there on her best surface, a great surface for you too, but her best.
For sure. That was the most challenging surface for me to play against Gabby. She was such a good clay quarter. I remember just what you said. I remember I looked over at the clock and it was 6-1, 5-1 and it said 56 minutes. And I thought to myself, my goodness, this is the quarterfinals of the French Open. I'm playing against someone I have a good, record against. And I'm getting blown out of the water. Like I got to get to an hour. Like somehow I just got to make it to an hour because I can't lose into, a big match under an hour on a Grand Slam. So I started stalling a little bit. I started tying my shoelaces, going to the towel a little bit more. And I just remember when I hit 1 hour, I kind of relaxed. I was like, okay, at least, if I lose, I lost in at least 1 hour. But next thing I know, like the balls that I was missing by this much, I started making. And it's the typical when you're down, you go for it. And when you're up, you play to, not lose. And she got a little tight. And I started playing better. And the next thing you know, we're in this marathon match. We're just, I think it was 7-6 in the second set, and we're going back and forth in the third. And I think she had 5 match points, but then I had 5 match points.
Yeah.
Before I closed it out. I remember my mom was with me, and I was working with Harold Solomon, one of my best coaches. I was with Harold for a long time, and I kept looking over at them, and I think they kept like shrinking in their chairs. It was just too much stress and drama. But it was the Bullring Court, which doesn't exist anymore, Court 1, and it was packed. It was late, in the day, and it was great atmosphere. But I have to say, it definitely was one of my most memorable comebacks, but it was one of my hardest ones because it was against Gabby. I felt so bad. Like, I just, of all people for that to happen to, I would never want that to happen to her. But Gabby is one of the best people I know. And it was like, nothing had happened, and we started talking about just other things. So, but it was one of those matches which we've seen a few times now where things can change. You got to hang in there, right? You just got to hang in there.
Well, you mentioned Harold Solomon, and you bring back a memory, because one of the other reports, I was there, I watched it all. I actually didn't get over there till right around 5-1, oddly enough, and I thought I'd be watching the end of it, and I couldn't leave after that. But I remember one of the British guys telling me later on after that match that when Harold went back to the locker room, he got a standing ovation. The other player was so happy for him that you had won.
Yeah,
I thought that was
it was funny because Harold. I had great coaches my whole career, but he was definitely one of my top 2, 3. And when we started working together, people were like, well, he was kind of more a conservative player. How's he going to get her to be more aggressive? And is it going to be a good match? And it ended up being the best match. I mean, he was the one that broke my mental, block about taking chances, and it was okay to make mistakes. I remember one of my first lessons with him, he got the basket on. He said, okay, I want you to hit every ball. I want you to drop and hit every ball to the fence. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, I just want you to drop the ball and hit the fence. And I couldn't do it. I was like, no. I go, I don't do that. He goes, I need you to do it. So it took a while, but he got me to be okay with making mistakes, and being more aggressive. And he kept saying, like, if you want to get to finals of majors and have a chance against the top players, you got to take more risk, and you got to come forward, and you got to develop a bigger, forehand. So it wasn't easy, but he got me to do it. And I had, terrific results with Harold.
So you, that same tournament after Gabby, you play Arantxa and win easily. That was a very decisive win. And then you're in the finals against Stephie. That was the closest you ever.
That was a heartbreaker.
Heartbreaker, because you're really on the edge of it. You're led 4-3 in the third and 30.
Serving. Yeah, serving.
30-15. So you're 6 points away from winning that. Talk about how, maybe, I know it was excruciating, but it was Stephie, and it was somebody you never beat. And
Stephie was super challenging for me. Yes, Stephie from an early age. I played her at, I think, one of my first Orange Bowls in the semifinals. And she was just so good, and just had such a dominant game, and the slice stayed so low, and then she ripped the forehand, had one of the best serves in the game. But I was getting closer. In my matches with her. And a few weeks before I played her in the finals of the French, I played her in the semis of Berlin. And I was up 3-love in the third set. And I played pretty, kind of conservative, being that it was going to be good enough. And she, of course, she was known. I mean, she raised her level when she was down. Like, she kept going for her shots and putting pressure on you. So when we get to the finals of the French, I said, I'm not going to let that happen again. I'm going to go for it. If I'm in a position to win, I'm going to play to win. And when I look back, hindsight's 2020, right? I made mistakes. I think I was up 4-2, then I was up 4-3, 30-15. I went for a backhand down the line too early in the point, where I probably should have kept it cross court. But at the same time, I didn't want her to, control the point. So it was just challenging, and going from having like my best comeback and then beating one of the best clay quarters, I almost felt like it was meant to be. Like, this was supposed to be my tournament. And then it didn't happen. And it was rough. And I had a long career, but that's the one match that, if I have to say, I wish I could have back, that's the one match that I wish that, could have turned out a little differently.
I always say the sport is so brutal, but it's also so beautiful.
Brutal.
I mean, the highs and lows are just unbelievable.
Exactly.
Steve, you were going to say?
Yeah, sorry, David. Mary Jo. So we just to go back a bit to the 2 Australian finals. So
yes,
again, you got to that first one in '90. That was a breakthrough moment too, and Stephie beat you there. What do you remember about that one in Melbourne? on the hard courts in the heat. And
yeah, I played great in Australia. It's one of my favorite tournaments. And I just remember, I mean, I went into that final not believing that I could win. That was just, let's hope I don't get, blown away. I do think I played okay one of the sets. But that one I never really felt like I had a chance. Even when I played Monica, a couple of years, was it the next year, a couple of years later? Same thing. I didn't really feel like I was good enough. I knew that her best was going to be, my best every time. So that was tough. So 93 at the French was the first time that I believed, like I literally went in thinking I could win. And that's why I was close. I was closer.
But it's interesting with Monica because you lost the second one over there, the 92 final to her, but in between you had a match point in that semi.
Yeah.
One that would talk. What do you remember of that one? Would have been a spectacular win.
Yes. So Monica, another one that was so tough for me because she had no weaknesses and she was a lefty. She had patterns that she would swing me out wide on the ad side and then hit to the open court, and it was just automatic. She hit the angle so well. And I do remember the match point. I remember saying to myself, I'm going to hit it. I'm just going to hit this return as hard as I can and hope that she misses. I'm just going to go for it. And I did. And she hit a winner. She hit a winner on the next shot. So I was like, but yeah, who knows? I mean, had she maybe made a mistake there, maybe that would have been the play, I think, not in the final. But Monica for me was the toughest opponent because even if you were up 40-11 a game, you had to earn that next point. She gave you nothing.
The two forehands on both sides too was just no weakness.
You didn't know where to play. Like you just didn't know where the weakness was. And she played so fast. And again, if you didn't hit a good serve, you were running right away. It was really, really tough.
And she was a departure from Stephie, right? I mean, with Stephie, at least you had the backhand slice.
Correct.
But Monica, which side did you feel was better? The backhand or the forehand? Backhand maybe slightly better?
Yeah, I think her backhand was a little bit more penetrating. Her forehand, she dropped her racket a little more, gave it a little more air, but didn't really matter. Like she still could hit winners off every shot. And I think the leftiness really made it tough. It just made it tough to consistently return well and hit to the good spots on the court. So yeah, so I ran into both Stephie and Monica quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, when I first started, it was Chrissy and Martina. They were at the top. And I always say with Chrissy, I always felt like I played well, but I lost 2-2, right? Like just over time, she always got ahead in the point. But
she wasn't the type to overpower you like some of the other
you could play. And then with Martina, you felt like, oh, I passed her a few times, so I played okay. But you also lost, 4-2. But yeah, Stephie, you could get to the backhand, have some rallies. Monica, she was the first one for me that you just like, whoa, I don't know how to play her. I just don't know how to get to any weaknesses.
So Mary Jo, toward the end in your career, unfortunately, you had a lot of injuries that maybe robbed you of the chance to play a little longer. But you did have that win over Serena at Roland Garros, at 6-love in the third. And I mean, and it was only a few months later that she won her first U.S. Open. What are your memories of that one?
So, yeah, that was towards the end of my career. I just remember, and I joke about it a lot, these days, is once Serena and Venus came into the picture, I kind of knew my time was ready to come to an end. I had a wrist surgery in 97. And then, just the power. It was just this consistent power, and the serves were so much bigger. It was just another level, right? Like I always say, every 5 years, the game changes and gets faster, bigger, stronger, more powerful. And that's what was happening. I got her on her worst surface at the French. But then I think my last US Open, I lost to Venus.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I saw those huge serves. But yeah, I knew I evolved to the next level for sure.
You ever reflect on the fact, Mary Jo, that by coming along so young and having at least a decent length career, that you got to play probably more top players than just about anybody? Stephie, Monica, Gabby, Chrissy, Martina, few times with Hingis, Serena, Venus.
Yeah, Lindsay. I got to play
Lin-
Lindsay and Hingis. Like I got all those generations. I retired super young. I was 28. But I started when I was, 13. And
Yeah.
I saw the best of the best and played against the best of the best. So I feel very fortunate about that.
And what about, how proud are you of that consistency? Because, you had this period of 11 years in a row in the top 20 and 6 years in the top 10, and you really were very reliable. Is that what makes you most proud looking back, that the professionalism and the consistency?
For sure. I worked really hard. I was always a big believer, like I'm going to do everything I can to be the best that I can be. And wherever I end up, that's so be it. Right. And my strength, I think from an early age, I think was my mentality and, my fighting spirit. I never got too down on myself. So I was able to just keep plugging away. Growing up, my idol was Chrissy Everett, and it was all about consistency, not making mistakes, like I said before.
I was going to say your mannerisms on court kind of mirrored Chris. You didn't get too high and too low.
Yeah, exactly. So, hitting ball after ball after ball, every day was a new challenge. I remember going out with Dawn and, I hit 50 in a row the day before. Well, today let's try to get 55. And it was always a good game for me to try to get better at. So yeah, I'd say just my mentality. And yeah, I guess I had really good focus when I was young. People do ask me, like, would I do, thinking back, would I change anything? And the only thing that I think I should have done that I didn't do is I would have played more small tournaments. I remember my dad was a big believer that to improve, you had to play the best players in the world, which I think there's some value to that. But I also think winning and repetition gives you more confidence. And I never really dropped down to play the smaller tournaments. And I remember when Conchita Martinez came around, she was winning all these $75,000 tournaments and $100,000 tournaments. And I was like, geez, she doesn't only play the big ones. And that's the one thing I would have done differently, just to get more reps and more matches, hopefully win more matches, because I was always coming up against all those players that you mentioned. So that's the only thing I would have changed.
Before we leave, Steve, and talk about
Mary Jo.
Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, before we start talking about how Mary Jo got into commentating, I mean, you had quite an accomplished doubles career as well. So I know we want to take on that. And Steve, I know you had some things you wanted to mention. I mean, good partners is key. Obviously,
the key is getting a good partner.
Good partners are key, but they look at you in the same way, right? You get one of the top singles players in the world, they're going to take that every day. So talk about your experiences with doubles and some Grand Slams and some Olympic accomplishments.
It's ironic. I didn't train for doubles, but I had my best results in doubles. I think the consistency, I made a lot of returns. If I got a partner that could put the ball away, then we made a good team. But I had great partners throughout my career. Like I mentioned before, Claudia Kotakilch was one of the first ones. Joe Dury helped me out a lot. Zena Garrison was outstanding, one of the best. And then I got to play with, Monica, who wasn't your traditional doubles player, but she hit the ball so hard that we ended up doing pretty well together. And then Lindsay, I won the French with, which was incredible. And again, she hit the ball so hard that it was almost like having somebody at the net putting balls away. Patty Fendick was outstanding at the Australian Open when we won there. She was all over the place at the net, so she complemented my game well. So yeah, so the Olympics, of course, the highlight. There's no question about it. I got very fortunate to play with Gigi both times, and she was one of the greatest doubles players ever. And again, we complemented, I think, not just our styles, but our mentality. She was volatile and animated, and I kept her calm, I think, for the most part. So really had the most fun playing doubles. I think everybody should play doubles. It helped my singles game a ton, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun to play with somebody else.
Of all those partners, wouldn't you, not to diminish any of them because they were all great, but wasn't Gigi the best doubles player you played with, or would you not agree?
She probably had the best doubles IQ for sure. I forgot my colleague, Pam Shriver.
Yeah.
Pam Shriver also taught me a lot. That's a funny story. She and Martina had just ended their partnership. And I think I was supposed to play with Coda Kilsch at the US Open, and she got injured. So I remember Pammy calling me and saying, hey, do you want to play? And I was like, of course, that'd be amazing. And I just remember match by match, she was like teaching me like where to stand and how to help and how to, do things. And we came really, really close.
With her? Were you nervous playing just because of the success that her and Martina
had? A little
had?
bit. Yeah, a little bit. And in the finals, it was very nerve-wracking because we played against Martina. So you can imagine there was tension and it was it was a tough 3-set. It was like 7 opportunities. But I learned a lot from her. Zena too. I think Zena helped me a ton in doubles, but playing with great friends. Lindsay became one of my best friends. Monica was one of my best friends. Those are always fun too, to play with people that you know so well.
So you were a little don't you think you were a bit underrated? I mean, the doubles went under the radar because you had so much success in singles, but
maybe. Oh, and I forgot another partner I had was Martina Hingis. I played with her a little bit, and she was so young and also had such a high tennis IQ, and in doubles just knew where to be and what to do, where to place the ball. So I had fun playing with her.
Yeah, great hands for someone who wasn't
played,
super
oh my gosh,
big
I had the best partners. Now that they're all coming back to me. I played with Yana Novotna. Yeah. She was incredible too. She had this chip lob that just went, over the net person's head every time, deep, and then she'd rush the net. I played with her too. And then one of my first, I totally forgot about her. Do you remember Larissa? It was Savchenko, but then it became Nyland.
Oh yes.
She played a lot with Zareva, right? Natasha.
Right.
She was the first one to say, Mary Joe, doubles is about first serve, first volleys. If you make your first serve and your first volleys, you're going to hold. And that stuck with me. That stuck with me forever. So it's fun. Doubles has changed a lot though. Like when I played, nobody told me you could stay back. I was coming in on really weak second serves, but that's how doubles was played back then.
All right, so let's transition into commentary now, because obviously you work with some amazing colleagues. You do amazing work there.
Thank you.
Was this something that, I guess, how did it get to you, and how did you it looks, I don't know if it feels like it to you, but it looks to the viewers that you're a natural when it comes to this.
I appreciate that. It wasn't easy in the beginning.
How did it start with you?
So I think once I started realizing that I was going to slow down, I started, thinking about what's life going to look like after tennis. What are my opportunities and what field am I going to get into? And at the time, I think my agent was like, people become touring pros, people get into coaching, and they get into commentating. So I dipped my toe into a little commentating while I was still playing. So I remember at the US Open, I would go do a set, I think one of my last years, with Tracy, who was working, for USA Network at the time. And then at Indian Wells, I did a set for ESPN, and I worked with Cliffy and Pam. So I tried it out a little bit. I never really thought it was going to be something that I was going to really enjoy, because I'm a little bit more on the shy side. But I love tennis so much, and I love the analytical part of it, the strategy, that I enjoyed it. Trying to break down the head-to-heads and all that. So I got offered, I was really fortunate, I got offered a job right out of retirement. I retired end of, I guess, 99. In 2000, I started right away with ESPN. And at the time, it was me, Pam, Cliffy, and Patrick. It was the 4 of us. And it was great. I learned so much from the 3 of them. And Cliffy, incredible teacher, and, one of my favorite people on the planet. And I can't believe, when I look back, I've been doing it for 24 years. 24 years. But I'll tell you a funny story. So my first Australian Open, I was pretty nervous. And back then we were tape delayed. We didn't show live tennis. And I forgot what match it was, but I was calling a match with Pam, and it rained. So the match got suspended, but they closed the roof, and then they finished it. and our producer at the time says to us in our headset, okay, we're going to piece this together. So don't mention the rain, don't mention the roof. Like, we're just going to keep going. And sure enough, within like the first 15 minutes, I think I said, okay, well, the match can change now because the conditions are different. And, they had a chance to go talk to their coach, whatever. And I started getting yelled at. I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know. I forgot. But I started thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like this job is really stressful. I don't know if I can deal with another stressful job. But anyway, I got used to people talking in your ear while you're commentating. That wasn't easy. And then speaking a little slower. Mary Carrillo, I worked with for a bit, and she always gave me really good tips. And one of our executive producers would sit down with me, and we would go over video, and we would go over and do constructive criticism on the matches, which we still do. I still do today, which is great. So always learning, always evolving. But like I said before, I love it. I love watching tennis. I don't get tired of it. I come home from the US Open, let's say the women play first, and I turn the TV on the minute I get home and watch the men play. And my husband's just like, you were there all day. Like, do we really need to watch more tennis? I'm like, yes, I gotta watch. So yeah, I love it.
So I've always wondered, our press section at the Open is very low near the court, about 8 rows up. And I look over toward the umpire's chair, and you're often sitting there doing during the courtside commentary. Talk about the challenges of that versus the booth, because you can't speak too loud. You have to the right times.
Yeah, each role is a little different. So whether you're doing analyzing from the booth, whether you're courtside or whether you're in the studio, it's almost like a different skill level, which you have to work at. And I think courtside, you don't have a lot of time to say much. So you want to say something that, hopefully matters, and something that you're seeing, you have a different perspective and angle than the people up in the booth. So, what are you hearing? What are you seeing, to add to the telecast and make it more interesting. But I enjoy every position. I love calling matches because, like you said, you get to talk more and see things from start to finish evolve. But studios is awesome too, being able to break down. This year at Wimbledon, we had a great studio. We were able to break things down on the screen and show patterns and show different things, and that's fun for me. That's I think that's taking it now to the next level to really help the viewer understand and hopefully get them more excited about watching the next match.
So we're about 44 minutes in. We want to, be kind with your time here, and we appreciate you joining us.
No problem.
I want to end with the people that mean the most to you. And people know that, you do have a tennis family. You have a son who's currently playing at Stanford, very high level, but you also have a daughter, recent graduate at Dartmouth.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking beforehand a little bit. She's also got into tennis in a little bit different way than what your son had gotten into.
Yes. So both my husband and myself, we wanted to introduce both our children to all the sports, wanted them to be active, healthy. And we both love tennis. My husband played a little bit growing up, but, he's been in the business forever as well. So tennis was always in the cards. Like, I was always going to have them play tennis. So my daughter's 3 years older than my son, and we started her off, pretty early. Got her to play some tournaments, and she just didn't like it. She came up to me a couple times. I was like, Mom, I don't like the cheating. I don't like some of these, girls that freak out when they beat me. And at one point she said to me, she goes, and everybody thinks I should be really good because you're my mom. And I just don't like it. I'd rather be on a team. I want to be on a team. So she played a lot of soccer. And then her sport ended up being lacrosse, which was great. But I was heartbroken because I wanted her to play tennis. And I said to her, no problem, but tennis is a skill you need to have, because it is a game for forever that you can play at any age, at any level. And you never know, you might fall in love with someone one day that plays tennis, and you're going to want to know how to play. So let's say her out and she'd do a clinic or I'd hit with her. And fast forward, when she got to high school, she came up to me and she said, Mom, I've been thinking, I think I want to try out for the tennis team. And I was like, what? I thought you didn't like it. She's like, well, I like doubles and I have a lot of friends on the team, so I want to do it. Great. I said, the only problem is your team's really good. They had a lot of nationally ranked players. I said, so if you really want to, get on the team, you're going to have to practice a lot in the next, 4 or 5 months. And she's like, I'm willing to do it. So she did. She worked super hard. She ended up getting the last spot on the team. And then she ended up winning states one year and reaching the finals the next year of doubles. So she had a great experience. For me, it was like such a huge accomplishment for someone who, didn't love tennis. But her little brother, loved it from the start. Didn't matter who was on the other side of the net. Didn't matter who he was playing against. He just wanted to play. He reminded me a little bit of myself, coming home and hitting on the wall in the basement and just always asking to get out there. So different children. He likes the individual aspect of tennis. And yeah, now he's played junior tennis and now he's at Stanford. He's a sophomore. So it's very exciting. Tennis has afforded him, immense opportunities, and I'm excited. I love watching him play. I get very nervous, but I love watching him play.
So how do you control the nerves, though? That was what I wanted to know. I mean, it's tough for you.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit like my mom. I keep it inside, so I try not to show, any emotion. And I'm I try to be very positive. Sometimes maybe too positive. You'll look at me sometimes be like, it's okay. And you'll look at me like, it's not okay. Why are you saying that? It's not okay that I missed that one. But yeah, it's I have to say, so last year was the first year as a freshman watching college tennis is another ball game. Like it's almost like a different sport, the people yelling and heckling and the atmosphere and everybody playing together. It's so much fun, which I really love. I wish everybody had a chance to be on a team and experience that. But yeah, so I keep it inside. My husband, a little harder for him. We usually don't sit together to watch the matches, but we enjoy it. We really do enjoy going out to watch all his matches, as many as we can. And we went to watch my daughter play lacrosse. That was a lot of fun too. Great teammates, great, parents. So it's been a great experience having 2 children that play, different sports.
Well, I will say this, Mary Jo. I did watch one match with you with one of your sons in Delray, and you were very well composed, no outbursts, very calm, and you behaved like a perfect tennis parent should.
I try. Sometimes it's hard. You're right. Sometimes it's hard. I try.
Steve,
I've had a couple, bad moments, but not always.
Steve, before we end with Mary Jo, are there any final thoughts you want to give?
No, just quick comment, Mary Jo, when you're talking about Christy earlier, don't you think that of all the players, stylistically, I mean, it sort of fits to me that you talked about idolizing her, but your tennis resembled hers, in my mind's eye, more than anybody else's, more than any other player that's reached the upper levels of the game. Because you felt the ball so well off the forehand. You probed. You didn't make stupid mistakes. You were the whole approach to the matches seemed to be so similar, and the mindset too.
Yeah, no, I definitely modeled my game after her, and I think her cool, calm demeanor, wanted to be like that. It's cute because I get to work with her now, and we'll be watching matches and she'll look at me, she's like, you understand, like, this is what we would have done. And I'm like, no, don't put you and I in the same category. You're much better. But it was a little bit of the same mentality. And yeah, I mean, she played, I was lucky, I got to play her so many times, and now I get to work with her, so it's been awesome.
Well, this was really fun for all of us, Mary Jo and Steve, and thank you for taking the time. And if you just give me 10 seconds, it's just because the timing is perfect. This is the same day. One of my good friends just came out with his first book. It's called 17 Principles of a Mission Elite by Raheel Manji. And I've known Raheel for a number of years. And the book is excellent. I've previewed a couple of segments. I'll have the link on all my socials of where you can purchase the book. Again, it's 17 Principles of a Mission Elite. Go check it out on all my socials. With that, Steve, Mary Jo, this was a pleasure for me. I hope you had fun going down
That was
memory
fun.
lane.
Thank you both.
And again, we went to some pretty painful matches, but let's be relative on where this happened. This wasn't
okay.
the first and second rounds.
I think I'm going to be okay.
These are latter rounds of slams. So you had a heck of a career, and thank you for.
I appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you.